Knives Out is a whodunnit film written and directed by the now infamous Rian Johnson. As of recording this review, Star Wars is imminent. I believe it comes out tonight or tomorrow morning in the UK, maybe across the world too, I'm not entirely sure. So I'll save all that Star Wars talk for the actual review of Rise of the Skywalker, but as many Star Wars fans know, Rian Johnson has pretty much become a bit of a hateable director. Similarly to how Brie Larson was treated with Captain Marvel, I do believe many people that seem to have this hatred for these individuals for ruining their favourite films or whatever probably don't know much about those individuals' past work. I mean, Rian Johnson did direct Looper, which is a good film, and he has other films that are pretty overlooked and underrated in his filmography too, even the ones I haven't seen, but I've heard very good things about films like Brick. But regardless, I think, directors are versatile. They can go from one thing to another and still deliver quality. And I think Rian Johnson did that with this Knives Out film here. I think it was honestly quite a blast. Ignore the fact that I just said blast, because that is like the lamest thing I've ever fucking said. But it is a bit of a blast. It's a fun ride. The film itself has a really strong cast, I must say. We've got actors like Lakeith Stanfield, we got Toni Collette, we got friggin' Daniel Craig in here. We got Captain America in this film too, man, this is a strong cast. And I think Daniel Craig honestly steals the show in terms of performance. I really enjoyed watching him in this role. I think he absolutely nailed it, actually. At first, I was really unsure because of the accent he was putting on. I really wasn't convinced of this kind of like Kentucky type thing that he had going on. But I think by the end, he really sunk into the role and killed his performance. I think the film sets itself up quite nicely as well with the plot, and lots of the little twists and turns throughout are pretty interesting. I think it nicely twists the whodunit genre a little bit as well, because very early on in the film, you already find out a very important part of the story, which I was not entirely sure about at first. But I think as the film progresses, it actually ends up making quite a bit of sense. I feel like it could have gone either way, and I've spoken to a few people that sort of felt it did fall flat once you find out how exactly the man dies, which I totally understand. I think that does make sense. Like, you do want a bit of intrigue and in a bit of a surprise, but I think actually Rian Johnson does a really good job of delivering it in a way that makes you sort of see the way the film plays out. Because you're essentially putting yourself into Daniel Craig's role of attempting to unravel everything, and then by the end of the film, of course, he does unravel it, which I think was a bit of a stretch as to how to sort of piece everything. But I guess there's always a moment in every film like this where someone's like, aha, I know where you were at this time, and you did this, and you tried to trick us all. But again, for me, though, I think it is incredibly well thought out with the fact that, there are these motivations amongst the characters once you find out that who is owning everything in the will, and everyone in the family suddenly turns incredibly selfish, and they just want the things that he left behind for himself and that kind of thing. I think that's the point of the film where I suddenly felt like, okay, we're really, really getting into this now. And I think what this part of the film did was attempt to show you that Marta had no motivations. Like, there was no reason why she could possibly attempt to harm Harlem. She was just, a nurse in the family. She was sort of welcomed in, even though she wasn't quite as respected amongst everyone as maybe she could have been. But she certainly was respected by Harlan, so there was no real reason for her to attempt to cause havoc. To add to this as well, she is an immigrant in America. Now, something that you sort of find out as well is that actually her mother, in fact, illegally moved into America, which of course adds to this idea of, well, why would she potentially risk everything, risk her safety, potentially be deported just for the sake of killing Harlan and What would she gain from it? There was no real gain from all of that. But there was gain from everyone else in the family who was selfishly trying to gain money from his will, the house and things like that. Of course, Chris Evans' character was the most selfishly motivated in that sense. But with this in mind, it did start to unfold a few issues, though. Because of the will scene, you find out that Harlan hands everything to Marta. Now, this was something that kind of confused me a little bit, because in the film, you can kind of get a sense that some of Harlan's children had never really worked their way into their life. They kind of gained a lot of their privileges through his richness, because he was self-made. He worked his way up to the top, whereas some of the children in the family, they kind of just gained all of their assets from him. Which obviously happens, of course, throughout life. Whether you morally agree with that or you don't, it doesn't really matter, because you're not the parent of those children. But I think Harlan himself was like, no, you've got to make your way up. I can't just hand you things. So I do think that was the main reason as to why he gave everything to Marta. But the problem with that is that why would you just leave everything to Marta? He obviously had a close relationship with her, but I just don't really buy that. Would you leave everything you have, everything, to one person? It just seemed a bit of a far stretch, to be honest. But at least that wasn't as questionable as the plot device they used for Marta, in the sense that she couldn't ever lie, because if she does, she pukes. Like, I don't know. Is that a thing? I need to do some research in this, man, because that just seemed like... it just seems so weird. Like, I don't think that anyone out there just suddenly vomits when they tell a lie. I really don't know if that was something that needed to be added in. Well, it had to be added in because it helped the case get pushed along whenever she told a lie and stuff like that, or how she had to avoid lying, because if she did lie, she would puke. It added nicely into the ending, though. I did think it was used very well at the very end of the film, but up until that point, I do think a few of the times that she did try to avoid lying, it just seemed like something they threw in there just to kind of help themselves. But yeah, I mean, without nitpicking too much, it was an enjoyable film. I did have a fun time with this. Obviously, there were other things throughout the film, like how her cousin conveniently worked at the medical center that helped them throughout the case too. Also, the fact that the old lady in the family couldn't distinguish her grandson and Marta, like, Ransom and Marta look exactly the same, a 6'5" giant dude who plays Captain America and a pretty average sized lady. Yeah, they do look similar. I see where you would get that wrong. But looking at how The Last Jedi panned out and how that plot wasn't really fully pieced together, I'm not really surprised that this film had a few issues like that too. But it's just annoying because so much of it seemed well thought out. Like, it seemed like they thought of everything for this film. And that's what made it such a fun time. But there were just little things like this throughout that just didn't quite make sense. So that kind of stopped it and pulled it back from being great to me. But at least the ending ended up being satisfying, and I liked how she, was stood at the top of the balcony at the end, looking at everyone in the family as they were kind of looking over to her and being like, "Oh shit, really? She's the one that's taken over everything here." That was kind of a funny ending, and there was some little bits of humor here and there throughout too that were pretty strong. Performances were great performances throughout this film. Yeah, I liked it. I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I feel like it's the type of film I could watch again, even though, once you know everything, you know everything. But I did have a fun time with it. Let me know your thoughts on this film, though. If you liked it more than I did, if you liked it less than I did. Thank you for watching my review. More reviews on the way on this channel. I always say this, and then I don't seem to have that many reviews coming. But, there's a lot of films out that I'm going to be seeing pretty soon. So, yeah, stay tuned for all those. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Comment and tell me what you think. Have a bye.